Hey everybody, welcome to video 43. Today we continue on with our talk going through the endocrine system in conjunction with the nervous system, which is what this unit is all about. And today we're going to be talking about the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. So between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, you can think of this as the command center of your endocrine system. Basically, they're going to be secreting some hormones that are either going to be major players in some of the target tissues that those hormones are going to be sent to, or they're going to be secreting hormones that are going to control other glands and other hormones. Between these two, the hypothalamus and pituitary glands, you're going to be able to coordinate a message between the endocrine system and the nervous system. So we'll take a look at the hypothalamus here. The hypothalamus is part of your diencephalon and actually will include anterior and posterior pituitary glands. There is one at the front and one in the rear with a connection between the two known as the infundibulum. You may also see it known as the pituitary stalk. The posterior pituitary gland is going to be made of neural tissue, so nervous tissue, while as we'll see the anterior pituitary gland is more so glandular tissue. Oops, I'll give you a second to be able to see that there. So here you can see where that hypothalamus sits. Then you have the infundibulum, that pituitary stalk kind of descending from the hypothalamus until it forms the pituitary complex here, with the anterior pituitary gland, which is primarily endocrine, glandular tissue, and the posterior pituitary, which is primarily neural tissue. So your posterior pituitary gland, being nervous tissue, does not produce any hormones, but will store and secrete hormones that are produced by the hypothalamus. Examples like the oxytocin, which is going to be used to stimulate contractions. It is one example of positive feedback in the human body between contractions stimulating and dilations, stimulating more oxytocin, which stimulates stronger contractions, and dilation, which stimulates more oxytocin over and over and over. Oxytocin also does play a role in milk letdown. We will cover some of these more in depth when we get to the reproductive system. Other examples of hormones from the posterior pituitary gland is ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, which is going to be used to lower your blood osmolarity. But basically that means you have too much salts or too high a level of salt in your blood. So your body is going to hold on to more water in the kidneys. That way it'll basically dilute your blood. So there's still going to be a large amount of salt in there, but at least there's more water to be able to dilute that blood and make that not as big of an issue. Here, just looking more in depth at the posterior pituitary, you can see ADH and oxytocin here going to be created in the hypothalamus, sent down to be stored and or released by that posterior pituitary gland directly into the bloodstream. Anterior pituitary gland is basically the master endocrine gland, especially when it's in conjunction with your hypothalamus. Growth hormone basically is going to be used to promote synthesis of proteins and to build tissues. So if you have more of that hormone, that means your body is going to be building more protein, building more tissues. That's why it can be mismanaged and misused by people, especially in humans, where we would use human growth hormone as sort of a steroid-ish type of thing. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Obviously, this is going to stimulate your thyroid gland, and it's going to stimulate that thyroid gland to release thyroid hormone. And we'll talk about thyroid hormone when we talk about other glands of the endocrine system. ACTH, or adrenocorticotropic hormone, is going to trigger the release of cortisol from your adrenal glands. Those adrenal glands are going to sit just superior to your kidneys, and actually they will sit on your kidneys. And again, we'll cover those when we get to other glands of the endocrine system. Follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, is going to stimulate production and maturation of sex cells, things like ova and sperm. We commonly see FSH used to help regulate cow cycles for ranchers who are trying to get all cows to be relatively on the same cycle. And then with FSH, those ranchers will also use LH or luteinizing hormone, which will trigger ovulation. So you're trying to get the maturation of those egg cells, and then those egg cells to be ovulated at approximately the same time for all of your cows. Just because that's going to make calving a little bit easier and over a shorter period of time. But LH is also going to help produce estrogen and progesterone, two of the major hormones of the female body, and will trigger testosterone production in men, the major hormone of yes. There is also beta endorphin will be released, as well as prolactin. These we don't cover quite as much. Prolactin you might get from the name, though, is that it's going to promote lactation. So with oxytocin stimulating milk letdown, prolactin is going to help promote lactation. Here you can see the anterior pituitary gland here, where it's going to sit, obviously anterior portion of the pituitary complex. I'm going to have lots and lots of blood vessels located within, as well as a lot of glandular tissue here, creating those 7 hormones, as well as any that might be produced by the hypothalamus that pass through your hypophyseal veins down here into the anterior pituitary before they exit to head to whatever their target tissues are.